All right, 3, 2. Hello, everybody. Welcome. Today's March 23rd, 2021, City of Cupertino Planning Commission meeting. So, in accordance with Governor Newsom's executive order number 2920, this will be a teleconference meeting without a physical location to help stop the spread of COVID-19. So we'll follow all the rules that are related to that. But before we do that, let's start with our roll call. So go ahead. Beth, all yours.
Okay, thank you. Here we have Commissioner Saxena.
Yep.
Commissioner Appeal.
Yep.
Sorry, my computer's went blank. We went dark for a minute. Sorry about that. Commissioner Modipatlo.
Here.
Vice Chair Sharp.
Present.
And Chair Wong.
Here.
Thank you.
Okay, we've got roll call. Our first item is ceremonial matters and presentations. It's the presentation and training of the Commissioner Handbook approved by City Council on January 19th, 2021. It's been postponed from the February 23rd, 2021 meeting. We'll have the City Clerk conduct the training on the Commissioner Handbook. So over to you.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, Vice Chair and Commission members. My name is Kirsten Squarsha. I'm the City Clerk. I will share my screen. So assuming you can see that.
Very good.
Thank you.
Thank you,
So I'm glad to finally be able to present tonight. We had a couple of conflicts with council meetings, so I'm glad to finally be able to be here this evening. The Commissioner's Handbook is your guidebook to the rules of the Commission. Tonight's presentation focuses on the essentials, but I strongly encourage you to read through the entire handbook, which has been thoughtfully reduced to 13 pages. All items being presented here are included in the handbook. This is the City of Cupertino organizational chart. You can see at the top that the citizens of Cupertino elect the City Council members. The Council appoints the advisory commissions. City Manager reports to City Council, and City staff reports to the City Manager. Cupertino's organizational structure is known as a City Manager, City Council form of government. So the City Council sets the policy and vision, and the City Manager implements policy and directs day-to-day citywide administrative operations and staff. City staff has two primary roles: one, to develop policy alternatives and make professional recommendations, and two, to implement council direction. Oh, whoops, like I skipped there a second. But so commissions serve as advisors to council and make recommendations in their capacity within the municipal code. The purpose of the Planning Commission, and I'll just paraphrase the most important items at the top, are to prepare, periodically review, and revise as necessary the general plan, implement the general plan through actions including but not limited to the administration of specific plans and zoning, subdivisions, and sign ordinances, and annually review the capital improvement program of the city and the local public works projects of other local agencies for consistency with the general plan pursuant to city government code. So the rest of these items are located in Chapter 2 of the Municipal Code. It contains the full scope of the Commission's powers and duties. Just a little bit on attendance. The Commission's attendance policy is slightly rigid in order to ensure a quorum and to be able to conduct city business. If you miss more than 25% of the regular meetings or 3 consecutive meetings in a calendar year, you will be removed from the Commission. If you are removed, you may request a waiver of this provision by submitting a letter to the council setting forth the reason for absences and confirming your future availability. So the Brown Act is the state's signature law on open meetings, and it requires all meetings be held open and public, and all persons be permitted to attend any meeting except in certain limited situations. The three key requirements are: all business must be conducted in a session that is open to the public. Business to be discussed must be on a published agenda. And the public has a right to speak at all meetings, either on the agenda items or in the category called oral communications. A meeting is defined as any congregation of a majority of members at the same time and location to hear, discuss, deliberate, or take action on any item. Commissions are required to hold regular meetings open to the public at a set date and time during the year. Special meetings are held outside of the regular date and time. Special meetings may be called by the chair or a majority of members. So to take action or action taken is when a collective decision or a collective commitment or promise or an actual vote by a majority is made on any item of business. The Brown Act prohibits a series of such individual contacts if they result in what is called a serial meeting. Serial meetings occur when only a part of a commission is present, but over time and space, a majority discusses, deliberates, or takes action on any item of business outside of a public meeting. Chain meetings occur when Commissioner A emails Commissioner B, who then emails Commissioner C regarding city business. And at the end of the sequence, the commissioners that started the email chain have no idea that a violation has occurred. A wagon wheel, or also known as a hub and spoke meeting, is when Commissioner A is the hub and pushes out information to the other commissioners, B, C, and D, or the spokes. And again, Commissioners B, C, and D have no idea that a violation has occurred. This scenario also pertains to the staff liaisons. This scenario also includes group texts and even paper notes. So you'll want to avoid replying all in emails, which amounts to a quorum if all of the commissioners are copied on the email. And you'll want to limit your risk by sending communications to the commission liaison and not stating your position outside of the meetings. Individual contacts or staff briefings of less than a quorum are not considered meetings and are not subject to the Brown Act. So staff can have separate conversations or communications with commissioners outside of a meeting and in order to answer questions or provide information, so long as the staff does not communicate the comments or positions to other commissioners. The following gatherings are also exempt: purely social and ceremonial gatherings or seminars, such as the Commissioners' Dinner that's held every year to honor outgoing commissioners and recognize incoming commissioners. Open, publicized community meetings for the benefit of the public. Meetings of another agency. If you do attend any of these events, please do not discuss city business. Regarding agendas, meeting agendas must be posted 72 hours before regular meetings and 24 hours before special meetings. The scope of discussion and action at a meeting is limited to agendized matters. It must also include a brief general description of the items to be discussed, and this is to inform the public and interested members of the subject matter so they can determine whether or not they'd like to attend the meeting and participate. For non-agenda topics that come up in a meeting, you may schedule items to be heard at a future meeting date. You may also hear staff and commissioner announcements or have very brief clarifying questions or responses to the public. The key word here is brief. Commissioners can propose future agenda items within the purpose of the commission to the staff liaison. And the best time to propose future agenda items is at the end of the meeting. Or if you do think of something outside of a meeting, just go through your staff liaison. The public has a right to speak on any item within the subject matter jurisdiction of the commission and the specific items of business before or during the commission's consideration. Comments may be anonymous. In other words, they're not required to leave their name. The chair may impose reasonable time limits on public comment. You cannot prohibit public criticism of policies, procedures, programs, or services of the agency. And the public has a right to review all documents or communications that are distributed to a majority of the commission. These are also known as written communications. The Political Reform Act is another state law ensuring disclosure and accountability of public officials. The Fair Political Practices Commission, or the FPPC, oversees governmental ethics in California, and it requires an official who makes or influences governmental decisions to submit a statement of economic interest, otherwise known as a Form 700. This disclosure ensures that officials are making decisions in the best interest of the public and not enhancing their personal finances. It also serves as a reminder of potential conflicts of interest, so the official can abstain from making or participating in governmental decisions if it's so deemed a conflict of interest. And if you think you have a conflict of interest, you can always check with the city attorney's office. So the Form 700 is due within 30 days after assuming office and annually thereafter. We actually have a deadline coming up. If you haven't filed yet, it's due by April 1st. So so new commissioners will receive an e-notification with instructions on how to file electronically. But of note, the council did recently revise the disclosure requirements for commissions to be more closely based on their recommendations and their decision making. So you'll want to review the disclosure requirements when you file. Rosenberg's Rules of Order. Commissions follow the guidelines on parliamentary procedure contained in Rosenberg's Rules of Order. Rosenberg's rules outline establishing order at meetings, how motions are made, and how the chair runs the meeting. As mentioned, the meeting is governed by the agenda. Each agenda item can be handled by the chair in this basic format. So first, the chair announces the agenda item by reading the subject and recommended action, and then invites a staff report. Not all items have a staff report, but if they do, the chair then asks members for clarifying questions and of the report, and then opens the public comment period for people to speak on the item. The chair then invites a motion and a second. Again, not all items require a motion. Sometimes you're just accepting a report or receiving a presentation. But if everyone is clear on the motion on the table, the body then deliberates or discusses, and a vote is taken, and the chair announces the vote results. The city work program. The city has one work program, and it's established by the city council, and commissions work on a subset as approved by the council. So the work program guides the work of the commissions during the year. Commissions provide suggestions related to their purpose in the November-December timeframe for potential inclusion into the city's work program. Council adopted Cupertino's ethic policy in order to promote public confidence in the integrity of local government. It contains provisions for the professional and personal conduct of members. It's one page and it's linked in the handbook, so I recommend you read it. Commissioners must also take an ethics course every 2 years as required by state law, known as AB 1234. You should have received instructions on how to satisfy this requirement, either by choosing the online self-study option or attending the training that's led by our city attorney's office. I do recommend the training that's conducted by the city attorney's office. It is much more in-depth than the online training, and you can ask questions. I think only one commissioner is left needs to take this training.
Kirsten, since I took it when I was on city council last year, do I have to take it again right now or not?
You have another year left, so I'll remind you in a year. Yeah. Okay, so you all have had email addresses for a while, but the city new commissioners are assigned a mandatory city email address after reviewing and signing the technology use policy. Please adhere to the network etiquette guidelines, or netiquette, since you do represent the city. Use your city email only to conduct city business as a commissioner, and do not forward or reply to a city email from your personal email address. If you do that, those emails could become subject to a Public Records Act request. So it's better just to keep your business and your personal emails separate. And that concludes the presentation. In deference to your time, you may email your questions to me, or as I said, if you're attending the training it's actually next Wednesday night, the 31st, 7 to 9 p.m. But if you'd like to attend that training, all of these topics discussed tonight, including the Brown Act, ethics rules, conflict of interest, will be discussed in greater detail.
Thank you very much, Kirsten. So, and
Thank you,
I don't know
Chair.
if there's any questions from any of the commissioners. Okay. Hearing none, I'd like to move to the second item, which is approval of minutes. Subject draft minutes of February 23rd, 2021. And seeing if there's any recommendation is to approve or modify the draft minutes of February 23rd, 2021. And give everyone some time to read those minutes. And when you're ready, someone can make a motion to approve those minutes. Okay. Has everyone had a chance to read everything?
Sure. Ray, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Okay. Do I have a second? All right, I'll make a second. Any discussion on the minutes? Any things that we need to correct? And if you do get a chance, I think my video is coming in and out, so please let me know when that's happening. And if you get a chance, if the commissioners can keep their videos on, that would help a lot. So.
Yeah, Ray, maybe the city attorney can answer this, but I know for city council, we were advised that we are supposed to keep our video on at all times. That it could be a violation to not have our video on. It would signify we're not paying attention when residents are talking.
That's a great reason. Yeah.
It's a good point. Not germane to the discussion at hand. We can get to that as well, but agreed. So if you get a chance, please do that. Okay, hearing no other discussion or any comments, I'd like to call for a vote. Turning over to Beth, our Deputy Board Clerk.
Okay. Thank you, Chair. Commissioner Saxena?
Absent. Abstain.
Commissioner Capio?
Yeah.
Commissioner Modipatla?
Oh, we may have lost him. Okay. Hopefully his connection's okay.
Vice Chair Sharp?
Aye.
Chair Wong?
Aye. I think motion carries.
Okay, motion carries 302 with Saxena absent and Modipatla abstain.
Wonderful. Okay, thank you. All right, with that, we're going to go to oral communications. This portion of the meeting is reserved for persons wishing to address the commission on any matter within the jurisdiction of the commission and not on the agenda. Speakers have 3 minutes. In most cases, you can state law will prohibit the commission from making any decisions with respect to a matter not agendized or on the agenda. So with that, let's see who we have and which wonderful residents we have and other guests. So anybody with the item that they want to talk about? If you do, please raise your hand on Skype and on Zoom, and somebody will be able to get you. Sorry about that. I'm using like 7 platforms this week. So. Okay. I don't think we have any items here. Do we have any written items, Deputy Board Clerk?
We do not have any emails for oral communications. I take that back. We did get one email for oral communications from Jennifer Griffin. I do see her joining us today, but let me get her email.
Okay.
She wanted to give you some work plan suggestions. She says, Dear City Council, Planning Commission, and City Manager, please consider adding the following items to the work plan. Cell tower ordinances, not guidelines. They should include minimum distance between any two towers and minimum distance to a residence. 2, work project to reduce light from all of our street lights and working with the school districts and employers of large office buildings to reduce light emitted from their buildings at night. 3, seismic upgrades at City Hall. 4, Planning Commission, review the R1 balcony design regulations to improve privacy for neighbors. 5, for the Planning Commission, review and update or create a tree list that lists trees based on location, i.e. street trees that don't drop sweet gum balls or fruit, which can cause people to trip. Screening trees, narrow, tall, that don't have a large spread, good for 5-foot side yards, and parking lot trees. This is sincerely Peggy Griffin. I apologize. I think I said Jennifer Griffin. It's from Peggy Griffin.
Wonderful. Thanks. I think we got it. Oh, Jennifer Griffin disappeared. Okay. I think she was going to say that as well. Okay. That's it. I guess that's our oral communications for tonight. We will move on to the consent calendar. Thank you, Beth. Item number 3, 2020 General Plan Annual Housing Element Progress Report, our APR. Recommended action that the Planning Commission receive the General Plan Annual Housing Element Progress Report and provide any input to staff. So, all right, let's take a look. Let's move to the staff report. Pew.
Good evening, Planning Commission. I would like to introduce for this item Lauren Ninkovich, our Assistant Planner, who will be presenting the staff report for this item, and we're both here for questions.
Welcome, Lauren.
Sorry. 1 second. Oh, hi. Good evening, Planning Commission. Give me just a second. Share my screen.
So Ray, this is being pulled from consent, right? Otherwise we wouldn't be.
Consent.
What?
Yeah, this is pulled from consent.
Okay, great.
My apologies. Actually,
It's not time yet.
this is not the time. This is still the consent calendar. Apologies for that, Chair. I would actually like to introduce Carrie Husler, our housing manager, who will be presenting the report for the General Plan Annual Review for the housing element update. My apologies for that error.
No problem. Yep. I figured you were going to jump back to it. Let's take a look.
Sure. Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. I just
Hi,
wanted to check, is my volume okay?
You sound great. Welcome.
Great. Thank you. I'm going to share my screen. I have a presentation for you this evening. Give me one moment to make this happen. I am not sure I have permission to share. Pew, do you have the ability to share the file I sent you?
Yes, I can help with that, Carrie.
Thank you. So I'll go ahead and get started. I'm here tonight to present you with an overview of the city's progress in implementing our housing element in the 2020 Annual Housing Element Report. This report was submitted to the California State Department of Housing and Community Development, HCD, on March 10th, 21st, ahead of the April 1st deadline. This was also presented and accepted by the City Council this month. So I'm here to give you a background of the housing element. And Pew, if you could full screen for me, I know you're working on it. I appreciate helping with my technical issue. Okay.
I think it worked.
Yes, thank you. So in accordance with state law, California cities must have an adopted general plan with a housing element. Cities must adequately plan to meet existing and projected housing needs of people at all income levels. As a reminder, Cupertino's housing element covers 2014 to 2022. It was certified by HCD in February of 2015 and adopted by City Council on May of 2015. Next, we'll go over a background of the Regional Housing Need Allocation, or RHNA. In past years, the report focused on building permits issued for new housing units broken down by affordability level, the city's progress towards meeting its RHNA numbers, and the city's progress towards implementing its housing element programs. The new report reflects changes to state legislation with significant reporting requirements. I will talk more specifically about each table of the annual report during the second half of this presentation. So now we move into RHNA entitlements by city. These two charts are available on our website as well. Here is an overview of the city's RHNA entitlements for 2014 to 2020. In 3 of the 4 categories, we have far exceeded our RHNA obligations. The city has entitled and produced 328 total units as counted towards our annual housing element progress reports, otherwise known as RHNA production. The city has entitled 3,190 units. Excuse me, I need to update this. The city has entitled 3,457 units, which have not yet been produced. The only area that is yet to be fully entitled is moderate income. I would like to point out that many of the moderate units are ADUs. We expect to continue to see production of ADUs towards the balance of 106 units.
So real quick again, just you're saying we met our RHNA requirements. Is that correct?
We have, let me look at this chart. So we have to continue to meet our RHNA requirements in the balance. This is the entitlements. I'll go into the generation by developers.
No problem.
Next.
But by entitlement wise, we did meet our RHNA numbers, and that's what from entitlement perspective, correct?
RHNA counts building permits. So these are the entitled, not yet issued building permits. And now we'll go talk about the generation by developers on the next slide, and I can help answer that question.
And can you also tell us, you said 3,457 units have not been produced, but how many of the non-produced units have been approved, but the developer has not pulled permits?
All of the ones listed here, and Hugh, if you have any additional information, please fill in. So we have entitled and produced of 328 units. And then the projects entitled by city not yet produced, we've listed out by Hamptons, Marina, SB 35, Valco, and Westport.
Okay, so those are all approved projects. It's not they haven't just been entitled, they've also been approved to be built whenever the property owner decides to proceed, if they proceed.
Yes.
Okay.
I just wanted to be clear. I wanted everyone to know that we have met the entitlement obligations. Let's go see what your next slide is. So.
If I may, the city does not have any entitlement obligations. The city only has obligations from the state's perspective to issue building permits. But yes, as far as the city's responsibility of entitling projects, yes, we have certainly met that obligation.
Right. Okay. And we can't issue permits if they don't ask for permits. So
that is absolutely correct.
Kind of a little unfair there. Okay. Thank you.
I had a question there. Can we sort of issue just a token permit, says the project is entitled and you're welcome to submit a detailed permit or something like that?
No.
Is there
No, then we would get credit for only that one unit that we issue a building permit for. However, the city cannot go out and issue a permit unless one is applied for.
Okay.
Okay, great.
Okay, here is an overview of the RHNA generation by developers for the same time period, 2014 to 2020. For purposes of the annual housing element report, they require that we report only building permits issued. In the last 7 years, developers have applied for and been issued the following building permits. Overall, in 2020, the city issued 20 building permits, of which one was a single-family resident and 19 ADUs. You see that there's quite a lot of housing that remains to be built.
So these are, if I may ask a question, so these are new housing units permits, and not replacing an existing unit, right?
Correct. Very good question. These are net new units. So in Cupertino, you might see building activity on a street that we don't get on a residential street that we don't get to report on this because they demolished a unit and then replaced, and it's not net new. It's adding to the housing stock. Correct.
Thank you.
Okay. Oh, so what about units that became occupied during, like when was the permit for Main Street issued? Was that before the current RENA cycle?
No, actually, I can answer that, Carrie. The Main Street permits were issued in 2000. They were reported in the 2015 APR, which is why the above moderate unit count is 164 there. That is what saved the city from being on the 10% SB 35 list from the state's perspective.
Right. Okay. So even those, so Main Street was not part of our RENA entitlements, right? Because
that project was approved in 2004 or 5, I believe.
I see. Okay. Thank you.
But the developer did not obtain permits until 2014-15.
Right. Right. Okay. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, I have a question on this. The moderate, you said 19 were approved. Those were ADUs. Are these considered a kind of a RENA entitlement for ADUs are fairly small add-on behind the house type of a unit. So they are really a addendum to existing house. So are they permitted by RENA as a standard housing?
Yes, we had the 19 units reflected here had an individual building permit issued for the unit, so it's eligible for RENA. It's a net new unit for the housing stock. It provided a new housing for a household. Okay, I will go into the overview of the 2020 report. The 2020 report covers activity during January-December 2020. Numbers are based on net new building permits units issued, which adds housing to the RENA stock. As a reminder, the report was submitted to HCD on March 10th ahead of the April 1st deadline, and this item went to City Council on March 16th. So I thought it would be helpful to outline each table. In Table 1, the housing development application submitted, the city reported 1 housing development application for the Bate Brothers property. We also have some additional information on ADUs that did not convert over into the packet when we converted from the HCD worksheet over to the Adobe PDF. So it's just a technical error in the packet that we've made sure was submitted correctly to HCD. Next, I wanted to also talk about some applications in review. The planning department is currently processing 1 application that was submitted in 2018. Canyon Crossing has not yet been deemed complete. The environmental review is underway. Now I'll talk about Table A2, the annual building activity report summary of new construction, entitled permits, and completed units. And this is really the heart and soul of the annual performance report. This requires information for very low, moderate, and above moderate income housing and for mixed income projects. Data on net new housing units and developments that have received an entitlement, a building permit, or a certificate of occupancy or other form of readiness. And then Table B is an auto-populated table that summarizes our RENA progress, and this is used to determine all the cities' levels. Now we'll go into Table C, sites identified or rezoned to accommodate a shortfall housing need. This is not applicable to us. Cupertino has more than sufficient sites zoned to accommodate RENA numbers. For Table D, the program implementation status, Cupertino is currently implementing all 26 programs and policies in the housing element. This spreadsheet provides a lot of detail about how we're doing that. And as a reminder, the Planning Commission reviewed the general plan to prepare for this annual report in October 2020, November 2020, and January 2021. So as a city, we're doing a lot on this effort. Table E, commercial development bonus approved. This is not applicable to us. Table F, units rehabilitated, preserved, and acquired for alternate adequate sites. It's not applicable to Cupertino, but we have gone above and beyond our housing element and provided $1.4 million in loans and grants for rehabilitation projects from 2014 to 2020. This includes Greenwood Court, where we provided $320,000 to convert 4 transitional housing units to city below market rate housing units. Also, in this current year, the city provided $174,000 in funds to West Valley Community Services for the ongoing rehabilitation at Vista Village renovation project through our CDBG program. In Table G, locally owned lands included in the housing element sites inventory. This is not applicable to Cupertino. This is a new requirement this year, but not applicable to us. And that concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to help with any questions.
Carrie, thank you. Thanks for letting us interrupt in between. Those tables are kind of complicated, so if you want to jump in. There's not much to deliberate here, but if anyone had any questions just for background, feel free to ask.
Right. So it sounds like of the RENA sites in the current element, the only one that was completed is the veranda. Is that accurate?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Quick question as well, Carrie. Do we have any sites where we have implemented the limitations that you haven't pulled a building permit or started construction that we're going to revoke those permits yet? Have we done any with any of these, or these are too old for that?
That would be a good question for Pew.
I'm trying to think. I'm trying to parse the question out. So you're asking about whether we can revoke the building permits if they haven't?
I'm not asking about that. I'm asking if any of these had been subject to any kind of limitations or any kind of restrictions that say when we issue one of these permits for you, or when we approve a plan, you have X number of years to issue a permit, X number of years to complete construction. We don't have anything implemented like that at all, not in those years.
In most cases, most permits are good for 2 years. Most planning permits have an expiration date of 2 years. Some of the projects that were presented, which include the Hamptons and Marina, not the Hamptons, sorry, my apologies. Marina has a 5-year development agreement, so they have 5 years to pull permits. Hamptons has 10 years to pull permits. The Oaks, I believe, only has 2 years to pull permits.
2 years on the Oaks, yep.
Right. And is there another one that I'm missing? Hang on one sec. I don't think we have any others. So that they have 5 years to pull those permits. That's
great. I just wanted to open that conversation up so that other commissioners know that we have abilities to incentivize certain actions without undue hardship, right? Some major issue occurred like the earthquake, right? That'd be a major hardship. Right?
Yeah, I mean, I personally would be in favor of like having it as a standard part of every approval, like a 2-year time limit to pull permits. Of course, people can apply for extensions if the circumstances so demand. But the fact that you can wait 10 years to pull permits after the entitlement, it sort of defeats the purpose, and it makes it creates a bad impression about how the city is looking at the project and how we're approving, because what is being counted or what is being actually counted is beyond our control, and we don't have any influence on them except for putting a time limit to end the entitlement. So I would sort of encourage us to think about making this like a de rigueur, like something which always happens with any new entitlement which is issued.
Okay. Any other comments from other commissioners?
Well, I think, when we did the last RENA, I think everyone believed that everyone that got an entitlement would submit their approval and start construction as soon as possible. I don't think any of us realized what was going to happen in terms of housing, and that people would get approvals and then decide not to rush in and build. But yeah, in the future, I think that may be a good idea in terms of reducing that amount of time.
And we do have that kind of, the expiry date on the approvals that we give to residents, right? Like, I remember 2 meetings ago, one of the residents, that came for a, deck, they already had an approval from 2016 or 17 that expired, and they were redoing, going through the reapplication process.
That Commissioner Madhubala was slightly different. Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt, but only because they had removed the deck, there was no approval for it. Because it was gone. The deck had been demolished in its entirety.
Right, but I thought they also secured an approval to rebuild it, and that expired, and then we made them to reapply, isn't it?
They had a building permit, yes, because they demolished it and they didn't use up their building permit. That is right. Yes, they had to reapply.
Okay.
If I may, Chair Wong, this sounds like a great discussion, maybe to propose in future agenda items, just because it's discussing future city policy, a little bit outside the scope of the arena item.
Thank you.
I appreciate that. We will move on. We're just receiving that. It's on the consent calendar. It's already been sent to council's already approved it. So,
and Ray, there is public comment. I see two people with their hands raised.
Yeah, let's move on to public comment. So I'd like to move on to public comment, and let's go to Jennifer Griffin. You've got 3 minutes for public comment. We will unmute you and get you on. So welcome, Jennifer.
Thank you, Chair Ray. This is Jennifer Griffin, and I know I'm not Peggy, but I do appreciate everything Peggy says. Yes, I do echo the part about some of these building permits for large corporations, groups, etc. To think, I think, especially with the Hamptons, we probably need to think about what happens if they don't build. I was there when they approved the Hamptons, and I guess that they have 10 years. I think that was it's got to have been at least 5 years ago that the Hamptons were approved and nothing's happened there. It may have been more like 6 years. I'm sure our lovely staff would be able to remember when this was, but I think we need to keep this into consideration when we're approving things in the future. The other thing I'm going to say is, I was coming to the city council meetings when we went through this current RENA, the 2015 to 2020, and one of the issues that we did not have to deal with the Scott Wiener housing bill. That stuff did not start up until about 2 to 3 years ago. So we weren't hit with this guilt trip about, I'm going to say guilt trip because some of this is a psychological use against a lot of the people in the state. You're supposed to feel guilty. I understand that, but we didn't have this guilt trip from the YIMBYs during this time, and I'm going to come out and say it because it is a guilt trip. But then again, we need to be cognizant that a lot of this SB 35 inflated RENA numbers, we didn't have to go through that in 2015 to 2020. This is something that is new, and I will tell you, after everything I have read and learned about all of this that's happened in the last 2.5 years, I am very, very highly suspicious of how the RENA numbers are coming up with now. HCD, ABAG, the MTC board. I have grave questions and concerns about what all these groups and people are doing. We didn't even think about this in 2015 to 20, and the RENA cycle that was even previous to that. This is a brand new game, and it is a game of control by these groups, and we have to be aware of that. So any RENA numbers that are coming in for the future, I say right now, I'm highly suspicious of them. But then again, we have to work by what our current RENA cycle was, 2015 to 2020. I'm glad the staff is taking the time to explain it to us, because I will tell you, I wish we were back there 5 years ago, because I think our state was in a much, much better condition. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Jennifer. Appreciate your comments. We've got Connie Cunningham. So Connie, you've got 3 minutes. Please go ahead. We unmute you and get you going.
Good evening. Good evening, Chair, Vice Chair, and Commissioners. My name is Connie Cunningham. I'm Chair of the Housing Commission, but speaking for myself only this evening. I will direct my comments basically to Table B of the Annual Housing Element Progress Report. It basically shows that in 6 years, we have permitted 327 homes, which leaves us with 737 homes to be permitted in 3 years. So double the amount of permits in half the time that's left. As we have just heard, RENA does not count those entitlements, even though we have many. Therefore, I am concerned about the progress for production on our current RENA permits. Two projects, the Hamptons and the Marina, have been mentioned as projects that have been entitled but not yet permitted, and that no progress has been made for several years. There are only 3 years left in this RENA process. Since they have not started to date, they may never ask for permits. So I'm thinking we need to look past them as we consider solutions to our housing issues. It's critical that the next RENA process should begin planning projects as a contingency, looking beyond these two projects, since most cities have not met their prior RENA numbers, and that goes back decades. It's not just this one from 2015, but a couple of before that. So the state is now paying more attention to each city and what we're doing. So since we're not likely to permit more, than the RENA, since there's going to be 4,000 or something that has been said, I think we should take a very proactive look at how we would like to see our city grow, and where we would like to see homes, and sort of just keep in the back of our minds that we don't have the Hamptons and the RENA, that we need to look past them. So I guess that's all I had to say this evening, and I thank you for your time.
Thank you, Connie. Thanks for coming to speak. So, okay, with that, I'm going to move on to public hearings.
We have one more hand.
Oh, one more hand. I'm so sorry. Missed you there. Lisa Warren, please join us. Thank you.
Hi, I snuck in at the last minute because I wasn't going to speak until I heard what Connie said. And it reminded me that there's actually been a request by some residents and some agreeing it's a good idea by some current council members that an actual inventory be done on where and what kind of housing is already in the city, so the decisions can be better made. How some of what Connie said triggered that memory, and I don't know if anything's been done about that, but if not, it would be great if you guys could suggest to council that they do an actual inventory. What do we have where currently? Because how can you decide what you need if you don't know what you have in certain places? Because this all needs to be spread out. It can't be plopped all in one place like so often happens. So that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Lisa. Thanks for sharing with your opinions, your viewpoints. I do have a question for Pew and the staff, just real quickly. This will be a question I'm sure public members would be asking as well. How long does an SB 35 project have to actually complete a build, or take a specific case of Valco, given the number of housing units there? How long do they have to build those units?
So SB 35 has a 3-year longevity in terms of the approval itself. However, if the applicant builds any vertical structures, I believe as long as they are, I think there's some language in there about good faith, that they're making progress on the permit, that there is no expiration date on that. And I think they also may have a 1-year extension on that 3-year approval. So okay. It's a little complicated, but ultimately, if they were to build any vertical construction, then they're good forever, as long as they keep working towards completing the project.
And who judges working, like making progress, right?
Steph, I think you might have to help me with that.
I'm not sure the law makes that clear, that maybe the purview of the court if someone were to raise a suit about it, but that's something we can look into in case it's spelled out.
No problem. That would never happen in this city, so thank you. Okay.
Sorry.
Commissioner Capil, please go ahead.
Yeah.
Sorry.
This regarding this arena entitlement, and specifically for the ADO which was mentioned in 2030. I'm just wondering that once the permit is given, how is the the end use case for that is monitored, like somebody uses that entitlement and the permit for a commercial purposes, is that permissible, or is that a genuine need-based moderate income, what it is quoted on the table? Is that something monitored thereafter?
Commissioner Kapil, if you could just repeat your question, I got parts of it. I don't understand.
So I'll give you an example, right? I mean, you have RENA permit given 19, I think, in 2020 for ADUs, right? And if I build an ADU and I just rent it out or put it on a Airbnb or some kind of equivalent organization to start earning income out of it, just for the sole purpose of that, is that a violation, or is that a city has some way to enforce it, or what happens?
I can answer this question. So on the table, it allows you to report deed restriction and non-deed restricted units for each income category. And these particular 19 units from 2020 are reported in the moderate income non-deed restricted category. So the city does not have monitoring oversight beyond the building permit. So the homeowner is able to choose the household of their liking.
And
now other units like, sorry, P, one more second. Other units like the veranda were deed restricted units, and those weren't 2020. I'm just using an example from recent history. They are deed restricted units, and so the city monitors for compliance annually. We look at the rent roll, we look at the household eligibility to make sure that the qualified households are eligible for the income categories and that the investment is maintained. So these are separate. These are non-deed restricted.
And I can help answer your question about the Airbnb. In Cupertino, our ordinance says that ADUs shall not be used for Airbnb purposes. And so we do have a monitoring service that that does look to that. And if it does come up, the city does have the ability to code enforce.
Thank you.
Great questions. Thanks everybody for participating.
And Chair, I just managed to check quickly on that question, and it appears the second set of HCD guidelines for SB 35, I'm not sure if they're actually adopted yet. Carrie or Pew, perhaps you can inform us, but they do address they give a definition for in progress. The last date I see of those being discussed was August 2020, and I don't know if they've kept on schedule with the pandemic.
I don't think they were adopted, but I don't think.
Okay. That's great. Thank you for those clarifications, everybody. So with that, let's move on to our fourth agenda item, and that's our public hearing. So with that,
I think perhaps, I'm sorry to interrupt, I think perhaps we need a motion to accept the report.
Oh, it's a consent calendar item. Sorry about that. Yes. Is there a motion to accept the consent calendar item? So.
Yeah, I motion to accept that.
Okay, is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay. Give people any more additional questions? If not, we will call it to vote. Okay, Deputy Board Clerk, Beth, go ahead. Let's do a roll.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Kapil?
Yes.
Commissioner Saxena?
Yes.
Commissioner Moody-Patla?
Yes.
Vice Chair Sharp?
Yes.
And Chair Wong?
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously.
Okay.
Thank you. Nice to see you all.
Yes, thank you for your report. Thanks, Carrie. All right. With that, we're going to move to our public hearings, item number 4. The subject is appeal of the director's approval of a tree removal and replacement permit to allow the removal and replacement of 15 live trees of various species and 2 dead trees in several locations within the Commons at Cupertino complex. Application number TR 2020-036, the appellant, Allison Matthias, the applicant, Evan Fuller, Grayson Community Management Services. This is located along United Place, Freedom Drive, Patriot Way, Congress Place, and Senate Way. The recommended action that the Planning Commission conduct the public hearing and 1, deny the appeal and uphold the decision of the Community Development Director per the draft resolution. Planning Commission decision is final unless appealed. So let's take it over to staff. Pew, all yours.
And let me correct myself this time and correctly introduce Lauren Ninkovich, who will be presenting that staff report for us. Lauren.
Welcome, Lauren.
All right. Second time's the charm. Good evening, Planning Commission. In just a moment, I can share my screen. Okay. Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. My name is Lauren Ninkovich. I'm Assistant Planner, and I'll be presenting an appeal of application TR 2020-036 at the Commons of Cupertino HOA. The permit request was a tree removal permit to allow for the removal and replacement of 17 trees, 15 living and 2 dead throughout the HOA. Here's the project site. The Commons of Cupertino is located just north of the Cupertino Sports Center at the intersection of Stevens Creek and North Stelling Road. Quick project timeline. On September 11th, 2020, the project application was submitted, originally proposing 19 trees for removal, 17 alive and 2 dead. And the report was provided by arborist Evan Fuller. On October 27th, the arborist report was peer-reviewed by the city's consultant arborist. The consultant did support all removals except for tree number 279, which was quoted as having a healthy canopy and ample room for growth. So then on November 12th, the HOA did eliminate that tree from the application. The comment period was between December 3rd and December 17th. Staff did receive one comment regarding trees number 219, number 220, and number 354, questioning why they were being removed as they were listed as fair in the arborist report. Staff requested further context on December 21st and clarification for removal of these particular trees from the HOA. On December 25th, the HOA did provide clarification and eliminated tree number 354 from the permit application. On January 20th, 2021, the project was approved per the projected tree ordinance findings. One, that the trees were irreversibly diseased or in danger of falling, and two, that the trees could not be supported according to good urban forestry practices due to overplanting. On February 3rd, 2021, the appeal was filed, and on March 15th, the city's consultant arborist was commissioned to conduct a supplementary peer review to investigate the basis of the appeal. Here is an image of the proposed trees for removal. All trees are proposed to be replaced in the same location except for those demarcated in yellow. Those are showing a different location for the proposed replacement. The first basis for appeal is that the appellant is indicating a concern that the trees picked for removal for this permit by the HOA are in better condition than some other trees identified in the HOA's internal arborist report. Specifically, the appellant pointed to tree number 198, number 199, or number 307 as potentially better tree removals. However, the city has not received an application for these trees to be removed and therefore has not been able to evaluate the suitability of these particular trees for removal as part of this permit. The rest of the basis of appeal is regarding two trees in particular, tree number 220 and tree number 219. Both are Canary Island pines. So here they are for context. We'll be discussing going forward in the conversation. The second basis of appeal is that the appellant states that both tree number 219 and number 220 are in fair condition. Removing tree number 219 would provide enough space for tree number 220 to grow and regain its health. In response, the second peer review report conducted by the city's consultant arborist in March confirms that tree number 219 should be removed and tree number 220 may have a girdled root, as you can see from the image below. The city's consultant arborist does recommend that tree number 220 be removed unless the HOA is willing to have a root excavation done, which would provide more information as to whether or not it's possible to maintain this tree in the future. Additionally, the removal of tree number 219 may complicate the maintenance of tree number 220 in the future, as the trees are planted close together and the roots may or may not be interconnected. The third basis of appeal is that the structure of tree number 220 is strong. There are no weak points. Per the previous response, the tree may suffer from a girdled root, which could compromise its stability and increase its risk of failure due to potential weaknesses below grade. The fourth basis of appeal is that tree number 220 is not planted too close to the stairway or the house. However, you can see the tree is substantial in height and could prove dangerous to the surrounding structures, cars, or infrastructure should it fail, which is possible due to the danger of the girdled root. Additionally, in the original arborist report provided by Evan Fuller, Fuller does note that this species is known for branch failure, so that's another thing to consider. The fifth basis of appeal is that there is no evidence of root damage to the stairway, the building, or the fence. Both arborist reports from Evan Fuller as well as the city's consultant arborist did note this in their reports that there is no damage to the stairs at this time. Evan Fuller did note that the roots appear to be growing under the stairs, demonstrating the potential for problems in the future. However, the primary reason for allowing the removal of this tree is due to concerns regarding root or branch failure and not necessarily damage to this particular stairway. The final basis of appeal is that the appellant states that removing two large trees right next to each other would result in a significant loss of scenic beauty. The code does take this into account, so in order to mitigate the visual impacts as well as the loss of urban canopy that are inherent in the tree removal process, replacement trees are required per the code. The replacement will eventually grow to be of a comparable size to these trees, which were removed. The proposed replacement for tree number 219 is a 36-inch box maidenhair tree, and the proposed replacement for tree number 220 is a 36-inch box Shumard oak. Both are proposed to be planted in the same location as the removals. Additionally, the appellant has submitted some additional photographs and written communication for the Commission's consideration today. It's unclear what the photographs indicate exactly, but perhaps the appellant will be able to elaborate on that a bit later. So staff does recommend a few modifications to the original conditions of approval. Staff does recommend modifying condition number 2 regarding replacements for greater clarity and flexibility. So essentially this would allow the applicants to propose alternative replacement trees should they be unable to provide the approved replacement trees for any reason. This would of course be looked over by the Director of Community Development and the city's consultant arborist before being approved. Additionally, 2 standard conditions of approval related to dust control and indemnification limitation of liability were inadvertently not included in the action letter for the project. These have also been included in the draft resolution. So staff does recommend that the Planning Commission adopt the draft resolution to deny the appeal and uphold the director's decision to approve TR 2020-036. That concludes the staff presentation. We answer any further questions.
Yeah, I have a question.
Yeah.
Are you
Thank
ready?
you. Go ahead, Commissioner Scharf.
Sure. I kept hearing that, I believe it was tree 220 that has a girdled root. I'm not sure what that means, but it couldn't be sure unless there was an excavation to determine if it can be saved. So I just wondered, how difficult and expensive is that excavation to determine if we can save that tree? Because a 36-inch replacement is going to take, many, many decades to grow to the size of the current tree. So does anyone know what is involved in that excavation to determine if it can be saved?
We have some experts. Let's see if they can
Is the
respond.
arborist here?
Yeah, I think our arborist is here, right? Well, maybe not.
We do have
There is Evan Fuller. There you go.
That is the applicant's arborist, just to be clear.
Right.
Okay.
Okay.
Can you guys hear me all right?
Yeah.
Okay. Happy to be here. So to your first question, girdling root, it's also called root binding or root bound tree. It's where the roots develop in like a spiral pattern around the tree. And as the tree trunk grows larger and those roots grow larger, they interfere with each other and basically choke out the bottom of the tree, which can lead to just slow decline over time or root instability. A root excavation, I'd have to check the site again. If I recall, it's pretty accessible, but it is a lot of work and the ground in that area is pretty compact. So with an air spade, which is like a special kind of equipment, it'd be at least a couple $100. My primary concern with that tree, though, is the branches more so than the roots. So even if the roots aren't girdled, that species is prone to like large limb failure. My main concern is just that with so much of it overhanging a building, that even a medium-sized branch falling, 40 feet could cause a lot of damage to the building. That is something that could be mitigated with just constant pruning, but it would also require regular aerial inspections, which become very expensive because they're so time-consuming.
Okay, thank you.
Aren't there other trees on that site that also overhang the buildings that are not being removed?
There are at this time. My understanding is that the HOA has a kind of phased removal plan to help with the goal, I guess, of addressing trees like that over time, so that they would phase out some of their larger, more hazardous trees, replace them with pretty much the largest size replacements they can get. And then, 30 years from now, you'd have very large trees in a kind of safer condition.
Okay, I was going to go to Commissioner Saxena, and then in between that, I was going to ask anyone on the HOA side and other folks just a question about insurance considerations with these trees as well. So,
Sure, before we proceed much further, because the commission's acting in a quasi-judicial capacity, standard procedures to make sure no one's had any, if you've had ex-parte communications or visited the site, now is the time to disclose that.
Great point there. Yes. Has anyone visited the site? And checked out the trees? I'll say I have. No ex parte communications, but I did drive around the neighborhood a couple of times trying to figure out which tree was which number on the map. So it's kind of a fun exercise, a little Easter egg hunt. Anybody else?
I've driven in the general neighborhood, but not specifically looking for the trees, and no ex parte communication.
Okay.
Yeah, I've been in that complex very often, but I've never been there to look at evaluate the trees.
There are quite a lot of trees there, actually. So, Commissioner Marina.
So I've been to the complex a few times because I have some people living there, but I've never talked to anyone about this tree removal, or I didn't go specifically looking for these trees, but I'm familiar with that complex in general.
I guess I had a lot of free time this weekend. Sorry. All right. Back to any questions. Commissioner Saxena, you had a question?
Actually, Seth touched on this. I wanted to understand who is the controlling authority here? Is it the HOA? Is it the city? And where do the boundaries of the power lie? Because, why shouldn't the HOA be able to remove all the trees if they want to? And why do the city get involved? And if the city gets involved, how much can we influence?
Great question, Commissioner Saxena.
So Seth, or maybe the city, anybody else who can talk about it?
Start, and maybe Seth, you can help me a little bit here. So the city has land use authority, including which includes when a project is approved, the city approves a landscape plan. And when you approve a landscape plan, that landscape becomes a protected landscape. So all trees in the development is considered protected under the city's protected trees ordinance. And as a result, the city has ultimate authority on allowing the removal of trees. I think where the HOA, comes into the picture is if there is a conflict outside, the city can issue the permit, but if there continues to be a conflict between, let's say, some other party and the HOA, then that's a civil matter that gets taken care of at other venues, not where the city is concerned. But Seth?
I really have nothing else to add other than that this comes under the city's permitting authority, and then it comes under the commission's appellate authority on this particular matter.
So thank you for clarifying that. So I have a follow-up question, because I somehow overheard that this tree removal is going to happen in phases. I'm not sure whether I heard it correctly, but that's the impression I got. And the question I had is that I think the spirit of having the landscape plan and having the city involved is to make sure that there's no drastic changes in the look and the feel and what has been approved over the years and everything. So if there is going to be a tree removal or replacement, as we're talking about, should it not be treated holistically, that like a complete site plan instead of, okay, we're going to ask for like 10 trees now and 10 trees 2 years from now and 10 trees like 3 years from now, which could completely redo the look and feel of the property, but it still incrementally may not sound a lot. So what is the general philosophy behind these things?
So usually HOAs, they come in with, it just depends, right? I mean, at this point, this HOA has been around for about 40 years, is my understanding. These trees, at 40 years, they do get, quite a bit mature. And I think what HOAs generally do is they identify, certain trees that are of concern, and they come in and they get those removed. They replace them. They give the new trees a few years to grow, and then they come in and then they replace, let's say, another set of 5-10 trees at a time. Okay. So that it doesn't seem like it's an overhaul of the entire site, so that it feels like more natural in terms of the removal and replacement.
Yeah, but we don't have any guidelines on that, like less than 10% should be removed every 2 years or something like that, or?
No, not necessarily.
Okay. Thank you, because, I think those trees really do add character to the entire area. So I do want to understand what processes do we have in place on approaching this problem and how to do it in a manner which doesn't conflict with their original intent and the spirit of the approval of that landscaping plan.
If I may also add make another comment. In total, I believe there are over 400 trees on the site, and we're talking about removal and replacement of 17 here.
Okay.
Yeah, no, I think it's a big point. Any other questions for other commissioners? Commissioner Kapil, go ahead.
Yeah, I have a question. My question is more related to safety rather than the landscaping. So, as I heard that there is a overhang of the tree over the houses. Apart from the overhang over the houses, I've seen some of the trees are running very close to the power line. So when we have a storm coming in, either the branches fall off, that causes the lines to short circuit, or there's sparking, and sometimes they can even collapse the pole on which those wires are running. So the question is basically how often you really go and inspect the trees. Are they really causing any kind of a hazardous situation in case the weather becomes not favorable?
Commissioner Kapil, is that a question for staff? And is it about?
Yes. I'm just my question is that how periodically you inspect the trees in the neighborhood to see that they have become tall enough to become a safety concern. It could be overhang on the houses if they fall because of a inclement weather, or it could be, the power lines being shorted together and they cause local blackout. So, in fact, I have seen it happen. It's not that I'm just making it up. So, so I'm just wondering how often you go and see evaluate the growth of these trees, because at the time of giving the permit, you may not have a bigger size of the tree. That over a period of a time, it grows and height increases and its overhang increases over the houses, and it has to be periodically evaluated based on that. Is there a program like that in the city's purview?
No, so the city doesn't do that evaluation. That evaluation is done by PG&E, and they go out and they do have programs to prune trees and assess whether they're impacting their power lines. So that is PG&E's responsibility.
Yeah, I guess that doesn't engender a lot of confidence, but like, thank you for letting us know.
Pew, to add to that, right? I mean, the HOA would do the tree inspection, not us, right? As a city as well in that jurisdiction.
Correct. I mean, city staff on the planning department side, we're 7 planners. So this is certainly, what we do, I will say, is when there are PG&E lines proposed or there are certain electric lines proposed, we do look to the landscape plans to make sure that the trees that are planted there are not ones that grow to be very tall. We look to PG&E guidelines in terms of how tall the trees should be at eventual growth, not when they're first initial planting, but at maturity, how tall they get. So we certainly take those things into account.
And Commissioner Maripala, you've been waiting, so you get your hand up. You still have a question still?
Sure, yeah. So it's more of a question to the staff. So I've been trying to read all the documents on this topic. I couldn't get my head around, so I just want to restate my understanding and get confirmation and maybe have a question as well. So there are about 400 trees on this property. There are 15 trees that are being asked to be removed by the applicant. And there are 2 trees that our city staff thinks, should not be removed because they are healthy. And then there are 2 other trees that our city staff thinks should be removed, but they're not in the list to be removed. Is that the gist of this whole thing?
Lauren, can you clarify that?
Can you repeat? So there were originally 19 that were proposed. 2 were taken off of the permit due to one the HOA voluntarily took off, and one was recommended by our city consultant arborist.
Okay.
And then this appeal specifically is regarding 2 of those 17, and whether or not those should be allowed for removal.
Removed. Okay. So the city is saying 15 can be removed as they're requesting. 2 we are saying you can't remove because the city believes that they are unhealthy and they don't pose any hazard, so they shouldn't be removed. That's the city's stance. Is that right?
So maybe I can try. So it's a total of 17 trees that are part of this permit.
Yeah.
2 that have been removed already. That all occurred before the city approved the permit to remove 17. And the appeal right now is for 2 of the 17 trees that remained in the permit.
And to be clear, the appeal is to remove them, or the appeal is to keep them? I think
the appeal is to keep them.
Keep them. Okay, good. Just making sure.
So who is appealing to keep?
That is the appellant, Ms. Matthias. She is here tonight, and I believe part of our procedures allow her time for a presentation as well.
Yep, we're going to move to her. So
okay,
let's go do that. Okay.
Thank you.
There's no other questions. Let's go to Ms. Matthias. So, and if you can unmute yourself, let's hear from you as well. Let's see if I can unmute you as well as a host. Maybe I can do that. There we go.
I got it.
All right.
Thank you.
Welcome. Welcome to our meeting. And
yes, very interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. I don't usually get involved to our HOA business. When HOA wanted to make 3 years plan and then remove quite a lot of trees each year for a couple of them. And I kind of get the impression is they were prone to remove trees. But I'm in the position, we like to make sure this tree needed to be removed. Then we remove. I was requesting 220 to be held because no matter which arborist is making the report, they all use the ambiguous words like likely damage to, or does not display an immediate risk of future. So Lauren says it's right. Everything when she read, we can hear that is possibility in the future. And I think I pay attention to whenever they wanted to remove the 2 trees together, because I think unless like this time we have 3 trees together because they were sick, okay, then we don't keep them. Hardly is 2 trees together, and then there's both have the same problem, like a sick or insect or something. And because 220 was only have the possibility words, not you have to remove. In the report even says no evidence of root damage, but possibility in the future. And I think we don't need to do it right now because we have other trees. HOA knows. We have other trees, even dead, not on this list. I gave this tree a little bit possibility to see whether do we really need to move this one. And talk about the branches on the roof. It's really easy to just remove that branch. So I don't quite agree with our HOA's plan. In a normal community, is trim most of the tree, and then remove 1 to a few problem trees. In our community, most of the tree they plan to remove. They don't trim them. So they made it to, we can remove them later because we will have people complain and we go through the arborist and we have the receipt. Everything is follow the rule. Everything is follow the procedure. But the tree really doesn't need to treat it that way. That's very annoying to me when I see they were doing this. Besides this, because 220 HOA insisted, wanted to take it off, then I think that's something wrong. When I ask the other one, 2 trees together, we can keep one and then take a look. Maybe we can evaluate in 3 years or 4 years. A tree, 3 years is really not a long life for them. But they insisted to take that 220. So I go through every tree, but only the outside of the fence because I don't want disturbing our neighbors. So outside trees area, I go through it, each one, and I find a very, very annoying result. The tree removed in the past almost have a pattern in favor of this or that customer. No, not customer, neighbors. I cannot accuse them that, but I would like commissioners to take a look and then read it. I didn't make up that list. That is the fact in our community. Also, when I double check the replay, if they say yes in the beginning at 220, I really don't need to spend so much time. When they say no, then I started to have question mark. Is there just something not comfortable? So I do a little extra work. I take a look, the city provided the map. Lauren can show the commissioners one more time. The location for replacement, they even don't consider the open space. They took the big trees in the past. So what I have strong feeling is, are we doing that for that residence, just for the window looking out and good? I would like commissioners really look into this HOA's decision on the tree removal. The regional map Lauren just showed us, you can see the replaced new trees are in the ridiculous locations because the open space they don't put. They put on my corner. I just noted today. They put on my corner for 3 or 4 trees, and each one is 10 feet longest or 5 feet. I mean, that open space you don't plant the new plant. And this corner you plant this much. So how do you decide the location to put those trees? Is the neighbor you are protecting, or is the neighbor you are trying to punish them? But this is a community landscaping. This is not my landscaping.
Okay, Ms. Matthias, are you done with your comments and your point of view?
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. I guess we would probably have a point of view as well from the HOA. So is that correct? I just want to make sure we're following proper procedure here. So, okay, let's do that.
Yes.
And who's representing the HOA today? I believe. Del Carson, is that me? You are on mute, so we can get you off mute.
Okay.
We can hear you now. Please go ahead.
Okay. I am Del Carson, president of the board of directors of the Commons of Cupertino, speaking on behalf of the board. Allison Matthias voiced no objection to the removal of tree number 20 at the board meeting on February 20th. We had spent 10 months reviewing which trees should be removed and which shouldn't. Allison, 1 year later now, has appealed to the city that this tree, regarding this tree, was a complete surprise to the board because we had no objections from any resident in the whole complex of any of these trees. Tree number 220 has been recommended for removal by 3 different arborists, and the board firmly believes that it should remain on the removal list at this time. A bit of history. Only trees recommended for removal by the HOA's professional arborist can be considered for removal, and then only after every HOA resident receives a copy of that recommendation and is given a chance to voice their opinion at 1 or more scheduled tree management meetings. The HOA review period spanned 10 months from April 2019 through February 2020 for the 29 trees the HOA's professional arborist Matthew Freed recommended for removal. Increased watering to 10 redwood trees suggested by Matthew and the HOA resident demand that no redwood trees be removed resulted in the board deleting 10 trees from the removal list. The board contracted A+ Tree Service after no objections to removals were received in March of 2020 to begin the removal replacement process of 19 trees after no further objections from any HOA resident. A+ then began the City of Cupertino tree removal permit application process 1 year ago, but it was delayed by the COVID-19 disruption. During that process, the planning department questioned 2 trees on the list, and the HOA later removed both from the list, bringing the total removal to 17 trees. 1 additional tree in poor condition has been taken off the list since it died and later fell across the entrance roadway, inches from a vehicle entering. Thank you for listening to the board's position.
Thank you, Mr. Carson. Appreciate your comments. and your point of view from your board.
Chair Wong, just a point of order. Any commissioners may ask him any questions, but there is typically an opportunity for the appellant to respond as well.
Correct. That's what I was about to do.
I'm sorry. Okay.
No problem. Yeah. So looking for Ms. Matthias, if you've got a response to that, to Mr. Carson's comments, and then of course unmute as well. I'll put you off mute, and then we will get to questions, and then we will get to the any kind of comments from the commissioners, and then we'll get to any open items from any questions from the public. So please go ahead, Ms. Matthias.
I understand Del Carson's comments about not rushing up to this project, but I also like to mention is when he say I didn't reject, and I come up when they already decided they already did work for 10 months and decided to move a few trees considering the members' comments. But when I come up to the, I have to admit it is, I was very respect to him when I have 6 pine trees around my unit. So when our neighbors are trying to do the group, like Lauren says, only Allison has comment. So it's a way in here they do it. They glue up and then come up to the board, come up to the HOA. So they first recruit me because I'm the most pine tree and 2 eucalyptus too. They think the pines on my roof, I will be very strong supporter to them. But I didn't because it's a good friend, it's a good neighbor. But I respect Del Carson because I think he will make a wise decision. That is not, we join the public affair. We don't put our personal interest on the top, period. I work a little bit, I volunteer a little bit in the community is a social committee. We trying to get a day to run one party. If they wanted to do the day and my mom will come back a week later, I will not put my personal interest on the top, say, let's postpone this party 1 week. I think basically is we don't ask what's there for me when we do the public. So I was respect Del Carson. I think he will make the, at least to me, is the reasonable decision. But come up, no, it's even worse. Lauren has that list. And my feeling is just by reading that list, I know he's helping a few neighbors. He's helping a few neighbors and not to care the communities. And when I go in the meeting, I prepare quite a lot of information. I would like them to see. We don't do this kind of, to me, it's almost massacre. Lauren has that attachment. Del Carson shut me up in that meeting and doesn't let me distribute the materials. And then he said, later on, I didn't say no. He said, later on, I didn't this, I didn't that. I joined the meeting, but I don't give him any chances. First time on him, second time will be on me. If I have opinion, I will open up to our communities. But I know I cannot open up in the board meeting because he will be there and he doesn't let me say anything. I have witness. If you guys need me provide more information, I can say that too. So be carefully and study a little into it. See what's going on. Why do we have such a beautiful woolly, very woolly landscaping, but we don't trim them well. Their cousin say, we put the water on there. I wake up early, about 6 a.m. Every time they use the sprinkler to water the plant and the water go out to the drain, I make a suggestion and he reply me, say, you need to fill out the form, you need to this, you need to that. So when he say we put more water for the redwood, I will say, we need to put more water in effect. I disagree what he's doing so far. City is my last stand. If I can communicate with our HOA in a very reasonable way, I will not come up here. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments and rebuttal. Commissioners, I see Commissioner Mudapatli has a question, so go ahead, Commissioner Mudapatli.
Yeah, so I have a question to Mr. Del Carson. So, was there ever an incident in your community in the 40 years of existence where some tree caused some damage to the property, like some branch fell off or something like that? I'm just trying to see, if there is a history of that.
There's been some history of that. A couple of years ago, a large branch fell on one of the residents' cars and damaged the car. There's been other trees that have come down but haven't caused any physical damage, but could have if they were to hit the house. I know one on Congress that did hit the house. The owners, of course, in that case, were required to do the repair at their expense. So that's about all I can answer there. There isn't a big problem with that happening at the moment.
Okay, so when something like that happens, where does the liability lie? Is that with the HOA or hard luck?
According to the CCNRs, if a tree were to go down, say in a windstorm or something, and damage a house, it would be the homeowner's responsibility to use his insurance to repair that structure.
Okay, not the HOA. Okay.
Right.
But HOA is responsible for managing this in a way that they don't get off control and
right.
damage.
We only listen to our professional arborist, and then we take his recommendations and we look at it from a board view. Should we leave all these trees on or not? Okay. And then we go to the community and ask the community what they think.
Okay.
So I think we have a very good process. We also trim the trees every 3 years, and now we're beginning to start to trim because of the age of the trees every 1 to 2 years.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Based on the arborist recommendations.
Vice Chair Sharp, and then Commissioner Capil.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, the only thing I heard tonight that was of some concern to me is the explanation that to determine if tree 220 really needs to be removed, it would have required excavation. And then I thought, oh, that must be thousands of dollars. And then I learned, oh, it's $200 to determine if that tree needs to come down now or can continue for some period longer, including perhaps with branches being trimmed. So that's my concern, is that $200 is not a lot of money to determine if an old tree can be saved. Yeah, that's all I have to say. Thank you.
I have a hard time believing it's only $200. We've, in the attempt to save 2 other trees, we put up, we've used steel cables to cable the branches together, and we spent thousands of dollars there, and we have to do the inspection every year. As I understand on root excavation, you have to dig down manually around the entire tree until you can see the roots, and then you have to re-inspect on a yearly basis.
Yeah, I'm just going by what I don't know either. I'm going by what the arborist told me here.
Well, I did
half an hour ago that it would be $200. I don't.
I did a quick look at a couple of possibilities, and it seemed like a lot more money than that.
Okay.
I couldn't get somebody out here for $200.
I'm not an expert, obviously, on trees, and that's why I asked the arborist the question earlier was how much would it would cost, and that's when I heard $200. If the arborist is not correct on that, well, I don't know what to say. Thank you.
Possible.
Seth, I think you want to say something.
Well, Chair Wong, I'll let you decide when I should weigh in, but I thought, hearing where the conversation's been, I thought it might be helpful to the commissioners to provide a little bit of kind of context about what your role is here, what findings you're reviewing and determining, whether they were met here. Because the conversation and the testimony has been very wide-ranging, and I want the commissioners to understand, where your purview sort of ends.
Correct. So you were going to clarify that? I believe our purview is pretty much whether we should support the staff recommendation or not, and whether it's within that purview. And I think we're not here to litigate what's inside the HOA, but I just, we're not litigating, but not to just, that's out of our purview, but I'm not sure. So I'll double check with the city.
You've stated it accurately. So I believe that the 2 findings that the director approved the permit on, and those were shown in Ms. Nikovich's report, were that the tree or trees are irreversibly damaged or in danger of falling, can cause potential damage to existing or proposed essential structures, or interfere with private on-site utility services, and cannot be controlled or remedied through reasonable relocation or modification of the structure or utility services. There we go. So I've just read the first one, and the second one is shown there. And so your role is to determine whether those criteria were, one or both of those were met.
It is, and we also have additional jurisdiction, I believe, if we need to request that the replacement trees are placed in the position of the existing trees. I believe so, if we want to as well.
You have authority to modify, uphold, or deny permit. Yeah.
Yep, we have the authority if we want to make such type of recommendations. So
that's right.
Okay, all right. Now we're all on the same page again. So I'd like to go ahead, Pew.
I was just suggesting maybe we conduct the public input portion, Chair.
Yes, I do have one last question though, and I wanted to make sure our commissioners had a chance to ask a question. And the question I have right now is really to Del Carson is when a tree is removed, do we place and replace that tree in the same position it was in the replacement tree? So the 36-inch box, does it go back to where it belongs? Because I'm getting the opinion from Ms. Matthias that that's not always the case, and just want to know why and when that's done. And to Pew, I don't think we typically permit that, right? That's not within us to say where the tree goes, right?
Usually, staff reviews the proposed replacement locations, and also is reviewed by the city's consulting arborist just to make sure that where the replacements are proposed is adequate. Particularly for 36-inch box trees, you do require a pretty large hole to be able to accommodate it, usually twice the size. And so depending on all of those factors, we review and approve that replacement plan.
Okay. All right. And then to Del, you're on mute, so let me get you to unmute if possible. Del, sorry about that. You're still on mute. If you can click on the ellipses, those 3 little dots.
Sure.
Yes, there you go.
Okay. I believe that all of the trees are being replaced in the same location with the exception of 5. 5 have been located, I think, where Allison indicated 3. There's 1 tree going over there, and there's 3 scattered around in other open spots. And the reason they're not being put back in the same location is because, for instance, on tree number 219, there's only a 1 foot wide space for that tree to go between the parking lot and the sidewalk. And so therefore we can't put a 3 foot box tree in that spot. So it had to go somewhere else. Only if the tree couldn't be located physically in the same spot was it moved to a different spot.
Okay, thank you, Dale. A couple more comments. Commissioner Sharp, Commissioner Kapil, Commissioner Madapali. I think you have.
I have a comment on the. I think the replacement is chosen to be 321 and 382 spot on the map which was shown, and those are pretty far away from 219 and 220. So I'm just wondering what was the criteria for choosing such replacement spots, because they can't. It can't be landscaping of the complex. It has to be just some other criteria that 321 and 382 are so far off from each other for 219 and 220 replacement. If you open the map, you will be able to see that.
Was that a question to me?
Is that a question to, yes, sorry, go ahead.
Do you have an input to those locations, or is that a city?
No, the arborist picked the positions for the trees, and we had no say to it. It was the arborist.
The city's arborist or Evan? Here,
no, the HOA's arborist, Matthew Freed.
Oh, Matthew, sorry. Okay.
Yeah. And so he picked the locations for those trees and determined that it was inappropriate in the case, I think it's 5 trees, that they couldn't be located in the same spot.
But he relocated them very far off. I am not sure what was the rationale for that.
Yeah, I don't believe that map that was shown on the permit is the correct map.
I see.
And I think Lauren knows that, but she used it as the best map that she had. A correct map exists in the our arborist report, but for some reason or other wasn't used on the application. I'm not aware of why.
Yeah, so I have a process question here. So when we approve those permits, shouldn't it have the actual map which should represent what the work's going to happen?
I think the written document details exactly where each tree goes, but the map doesn't show it correctly.
Can we get a copy of the correct map anywhere from staff? Just so
Lauren, I think, has a copy in the arborist report.
All right, let's double check. I don't see that.
The only copy I have is the one that's
in Matthew Freed. In Matthew Freed's report is where the correct map is.
That was not submitted as part of the application.
No, I agree. And I wasn't aware that that map wasn't used in the application. This one is approximately right, but it's not exactly like the written locations.
So, Chair, Chair, if I may answer that question. So the city has approved the map that was submitted to it.
Correct. That's what I'm trying to establish.
The person is referencing right now.
Correct.
It's very close, but I think a couple of the tree locations, one of them possibly shows in the sports center parking lot, is not correct. It's off by a little ways, and maybe when they reproduced it shifted. I'm not sure.
Exactly. If you notice here, 382 and 321 are the replacement locations.
Yeah, 382 is correct. I'm not sure. 320.
Probably 380. Yeah, you don't have jurisdiction to put it into 321. The Sports Center would have to get in on that one. So, right at the edge.
No. It's
actually, it's right at the edge.
Yeah.
It's right at the edge.
It
It's right
should
at the
be.
edge.
It should be located where 219 and 220 are, is where it's supposed to be. So apparently they couldn't get it in the same spot and get it typed on the map.
Okay. All right. Can we stop the screen share, go to Vice Chair Scharf, and then Commissioner Motorball?
Right. So can you put back on the screen the criteria that we're voting on? It was the blue. I can't remember which screen it was. What we're actually voting on?
Yes, the item 1 and 3. Let's put those back up. There we go. Tree removal findings.
Right. Right. So I'm looking at number 1, and I don't see that that's been met at all. I mean, that's my only comment. I mean, we've heard we've heard one person say we can determine it for $200. Another person say, no, we can't determine it for $200. Personally, I don't have enough information to deny the appeal. That's my thought. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Okay, we're not at the voting stage, but Mooney, please go ahead.
Yeah, so I would like to get back to that picture, the locations of removals and replants, if you can share. I really want to understand, what is the bone of contention here, right? Like, there are 17 trees. I understand, the vast majority of the trees that are being asked for removal, we are agreeing. I want to understand which ones, we have issue with.
I believe it's 219 is the one we have issue with. 220, sorry. No, next to 219.
So 220 is the one that we are saying, we won't approve for removal. Is that right?
That's the one that's been appealed.
One thing that hasn't been brought up is tree number 219 has already raised the foundation of the structure by 3 inches. So that is a definite problem, and 220 is expected or felt like will create the same problem in the very near future. But the house structure has been raised by 3 inches in that location.
Okay, so I want to get comfortable before I vote on this topic, because I really want to understand, what's the contention. Is it 219 and 220? The applicant is asking for removal, but we are saying, no, we cannot approve removal of those trees. Is that the contention between their arborist and city arborist?
Maybe I can try to summarize, Chair Wong.
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. So my understanding is there is consensus on the removal of 219 and 220 between both the arborists. I think Ms. Matthias, who is a resident in this community, is not happy with the city's approval of tree number 220. Particularly, as I'm gathering here, is because the replacements are being planted close to her property potentially. Additionally, I just wanted to also address Commissioner Scharf's question, why finding number 1 was used, where we talked about trees being irreversibly diseased. There were 2 dead trees as part of this application as well, and that finding was only pertaining to those 2 dead trees.
Okay, so it doesn't mean that every tree has to be irreversibly diseased. Okay.
So you're saying, if I heard you correct, 219 and 220, the city agreed with the HOA's request for removal, but there is a resident, not agreeing to removal of 220, and that's why we are having this conversation?
Correct. That is my understanding. Yes.
We have three parties here. We have the city's arborist, who is in consultation with the HOA's arborists, who are in agreement, and we have a resident of the HOA appealing to the city using the appeal process.
Great. So thanks for the clarification. Now, what is our jurisdiction in that matter? Like, do we have, I know as a city, we have to listen and serve every resident, but then this is a discussion between, HOA and, and the resident. So I'm trying to see, what's our involvement in this as a city?
Our involvement as a city, I believe, and Seth, correct me if I'm incorrect, so I don't get myself in trouble here, is that we're ruling whether we should deny the appeal or not, and that's based on the residents' appeal of the decision between both arborists.
Okay. So the both arborists are in 100% alignment in terms of what trees to remove. Is that right?
Both arborists are in 100% agreement as to the removal of the trees. Neither arborist has provided us with the city does not say where the replacement trees will be placed, and the HOA's arborist will determine where the replacement trees are placed.
Okay.
Actually, that will be determined in consultation with the city's consulting arborist as well for where the final replacements will go. And in terms of tree number 220, I did want to make the distinction that our arborist, the city's consulting arborist, suggested that, the trees should come out, but, maybe there's a chance to investigate and further clearly determine whether tree number 220 needs to be removed with that further digging, the hand digging, the air spade thing.
That's the one that Commissioner Stephen Sharp brought up, saying, for $200, we can potentially determine that based on, the HOA.
That is the quote that we heard from the applicant's arborist.
And let's get Evan Fuller in here as well. He's had his hand up as well. So maybe that'll help clarify things. Go ahead and unmute yourself.
So just to clarify that, the point of cost, I didn't say $200, I said several $100s, which, depending on what sort of scale you're talking, may still not be a whole lot of money, but if we have a crew out there for, say, an hour and a half digging around the tree, that's going to be closer to $800, which again, you may not consider that a lot, but I just wanted to clarify that it certainly will be more than $200.
Got it. No problem. Having been president of an HOA, I can tell you that can be a lot of money, depending on how your HOA is doing.
I've been president of an HOA as well.
Yeah, it's never fun. Okay. Any other questions? And then let's open to the public, but I don't see any questions from the public either. So just want to make sure that we've done that. I guess, Ms. Mattias, you are still part of the public, but you are also the appellant. So hold on. We'll get back to you. Okay. I see no questions from the public. I'm going to close that portion. Ms. Mattias, you want to say something?
Yes, I would like to answer Dale Carson's comments about the roots damage. Actually, most of the tree removed from the commons, we leave the stump. So when two trees together, if we don't touch the root, the 220 is pretty safe. But I don't understand why this time they want to remove that special stump. Are
you talking about the stump on 220 or 219?
219. Because he mentioned to move 219, then 220 has to move. But why do we need to move 219 in a way to have to move 220 first? Second, when Lauren make recommendation, Lauren didn't have the information I provided her in these 2 days. I didn't have those either. So when you make your decision, make your vote, maybe you should know the more information from Lauren gave a recommendation to today. Those are not included in Lauren's recommendation. When she made that recommendation, I want to say she's very nice. She's very helpful, okay? But when she made that recommendation, she didn't have the information I provide to the city yet. Maybe you guys, maybe commissioners can spend a few time and then get those information added before you make any decision.
So, Ms. Mathias, just to be clear, I did go through what you provided. I think what you're basically assuring is that these, you do not understand the rationale as to why certain trees are removed versus others at the point of time that they're being removed. Is that correct? Mm-hmm. Okay. And the second point is, this is more directed to Del. In the large context of how trees are removed, if there's a 3-year plan to remove trees, like what is the determination for, like, you know, the 19 trees this year versus the 19 trees the next year? Is that priority clear to residents, or is that just, you know, just based on spreading up?
We have never had a 3-year plan to remove trees. We've talked about coming up with one, but the arborist, Matthew Freed, that we hired, was not for a 3-year plan. He was for a year-by-year plan. And so we have him come out once a year and create a maintenance, which is trimming, and a recommendation of any trees that need removal. He did this in October, and we don't have additional trees to remove at this time. So he was not in favor of a 3-year plan, and we only listen to what the arborist recommends because we're not experts in that area.
Okay.
Can I comment?
Yeah, please. I'll give you one last comment, and then we will go back to deliberation within the commission.
Okay. Del Carson say we do trimming. In my experiments with the trimming, every 3 or 4 years, not including the pines, but because I request, so they trim it's not mine, it's trim the pines next to my house. And when this year they do the trimming, I volunteer, tell the communities, we have somebody watching they do, we will get a better trim because it's so expensive according to Del Carson. So I go there, and when they trim, and I say, why don't you trim this branch you see you should trim? And they show me, they say, not in the scope. And I say, and it's very interesting is we have the other board member, Nancy, and Nancy with me walk on the community, and she pointed to say, what's the trimming job doing that? You see that branch is this low. And I was jokingly reply her, and then I say, you know, how come you ask me? You are the one who signed the contract. It's not in the scope. But am I have a position to say anything? No. But Del Carson says we do extreme work. We train, well, this and that. It's not the truth. It is not the truth. But in the document, it will show, see, this year we do the trim. See, that year we do the trim. See, that year we do the trim. No, that's not the truth.
Okay. Well, thank you, Ms. Mathias. I'm going to take it back to the commission.
And also, can I have a little more? And also, I want to emphasize one thing is, you know, we are not, you narrow yourself, you have so much power. You know we are not sitting here and then discussing 220. You know we were sitting here because you say you read whatever I provided to Lauren. You say that you read. You know we are not sitting here discuss 220. You know we are sitting here to discuss how HOA make a decision for this 300 trees. You know that. If you really read what I provided, you would narrow yourself. You say, Mathias, you know, that's not our business. We only discuss this 220. In this way, can we ask other commissioners also just read what Chair Wong say he read. The same material. I don't need to provide more. The same material. See, are you going to tell yourself, say, let's discuss how are we going to do 220?
So, Ms. Matthias, thank you for your comments. Really appreciate it. I will point it back to the commission. Go ahead.
We do have a hand raised. It did. Sometimes there's a delay in raising the hands, depending on your
let's go to Nancy.
Your processing speed. So we do have oral communications.
Let's go to Nancy Hertien. Let's please, and she's got her hand raised. Please join us. You have 3 minutes to provide your comments. Nancy? Oh, you're muted. Let's see if we can find a way to unmute you. Let's ask you to unmute and see if you can. There you go.
Muted?
Nancy, we can hear you now. Please join us.
Okay. I've lived at the Commons for a little bit over 40 years. When I moved in, the trees were all the height of the fence. So I've seen them grow to humongous heights and girths. And I have also been on the tree removal trimming committee with another board member for several years. And this is the first time we have ever had anyone appeal a decision. I honestly feel that the 3 consulting arborists, Matthew Freed, Evan Fuller, and Glenn Whitlock Reeve, have done an excellent job. They have looked at everything here. They have made their recommendations, and I'd like to see what happens now, because I know Allison has a good heart. She likes trees. She cares for trees. She has trees around her house, and she's loaded up on her roof with pine needles every year. She takes care of them many times herself by getting them down. But I think in this circumstance, she doesn't have the actual knowledge of the trees' circumstances that we have right now. And I would like to see a different decision on her part. Tree 220 is questionable. I don't think we have an exact figure for the removal of the soil to check the entwining crowning roots. Also, tree number 219 will certainly have roots that have extended into 220. So I think it's going to be a heck of a price to get that excavation done. I don't know if you want us to investigate it more. I suppose we can, but it's costing us a lot of money to do the whole removals and the trimming every 3 years. So I would hope that you would think long and hard about our problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Nancy. Appreciate your comments. We're going to close public discussion. I'll wait again, just in case there's another hand, but I think we're okay. And then I will go to the commissioners. Anyone have a motion? And where are we today? So, commissioners?
Do any of the other commissioners have anything else to say?
You can make the motion first. Or we can do
okay.
I have a comment. So I want to be crystal clear on know what we are voting on. So in layman's terms, right?
In layman's terms, depending on what motion is made, right? So I'll let whoever wants to make a motion explain what motion they're making. Okay. But there's basically a simple motion, which would be we agree with the staff decision, which means that we deny the appeal. That's one option. We agree that the appeal should not be denied. That's another motion you can make. That means Ms. Matthias's point of view is being made. We could agree on one or two, and then put some restrictions as to, trees have to be planted back where they're removed if we wanted to get into that business, or we let our staff decide and we decide not to do that. So lots of options there, but that's what you're voting against. And to put it back into layman's terms, we have the arborist, the consulting arborist from our city, the arborist from the HOA in agreement that these trees should be removed for the reasons that are being said. We have the staff that has reviewed a plan. We have a plan in terms of where the replacement trees are in place that may not be accurate, but that's really not our part of the conversation.
So,
Okay.
so those discussions options are for 219 and 220. Those are the only two trees in question. Is that right?
I believe so. Let's make sure we've got the right numbers. Yep, I'm getting some nods. Okay. so anybody want to make a motion?
I will propose a motion to accept the staff recommendation, which includes some amendments and to the original plan and a general denial of the appeal.
And what are the exceptions? Please be clear on those.
I think those are already included in the staff proposal, right? So
I want to double check that. I'm channeling my inner Seth.
So the staff has proposed some amendments, right, in the original plan.
I believe so. I just want to make sure.
Do you want to address those?
Yes, so there were 3 amendments that were made. One is to condition number 2, which was with regard to the replacements. We just wanted to make clear which replacement was for which tree removed. And we also allowed the applicant a little bit of flexibility in choosing different replacement trees in the event they were unable to find that particular replacement tree at a nursery, but that would still have to be reviewed and approved by staff and the city's consulting arborist before it was replaced. Or planted. There were 2 additional conditions of approval that were inadvertently omitted, and so we've just added those. Those are just standard conditions that we apply to every project.
Got it. I just wanted to make sure that was clear so everybody knows what we're talking about in layman's terms. Back to Commissioner Moody's point, that's a very good point.
I'm not clear about the third point, what she mentioned right now. So can you repeat what was the third amendment?
Yes. So the third point was we added 2 conditions of approval that were inadvertently omitted from the city's action letter that was sent out. One was related to indemnification. With every application, the city likes to make sure that the city is indemnified in the event of anything. And Lauren, can you remind me what the other condition was with regard to it?
The other one is regarding dust control.
Dust control, yes. So as just to make sure that there's no excessive dust that is generated and that
watering all active construction areas and covering all truck hauling soils.
Exactly.
So, got it. Yep. Okay. Okay. All right. Is there a second to Commissioner Saxena's motion that's in play?
I second that.
Yeah, I second too.
You're a little late, but Commissioner Mooney has the second. Any debate and discussion?
Yeah.
I'll do it in order. We'll go to Commissioner Saxena, Commissioner Capillo, Commissioner Madipatla, and then Commissioner and Vice Chair Scharf, and we'll do it in that order. So let's hear what your thoughts are.
I think there are a whole bunch of issues which have come up here. It's clear that some residents are not happy with the way or that some of the decisions which the HOA made. Unfortunately, that is not a decision which we in the Planning Commission should be debating. That's something that the HOA needs to figure out itself, and probably the other forums to debate those if need to be. I personally will feel that the staff recommendations are sort of justified by the evidence presented. So that's why I feel we should support them, even though that doesn't necessarily imply that the reason for the appeal or the way the HOA function is something which we are all in a position to comment on or to approve. That's not in our jurisdiction.
Okay, Commissioner Saxena, thank you. Commissioner Capil?
Yeah, I would go with professional advice on the tree. So if arborist said that it is diseased, then it's kind of either it will be a safety hazard or it could it's not something to debate about because that's a professional assessment, and there is no vested interest in cities. Assuming there is no vested interest in the arborist viewpoint there. regarding a replacement, that is something probably might be more debatable. So, based on that, I would think that staff position is. I will go with the staff position on this.
Okay, Commissioner Moripala.
Yeah, so I was struggling with this, when I was reading through the material, I was somewhat, lost. And so I was very uncomfortable, to weigh in and vote on this. And thanks to the staff and, and everyone educating me on the issue. So I do understand, what's being discussed here. So I feel comfortable, voting on it. Thank you, everyone. I do see there is a disconnect or no disagreement between HOA and and its members, residents. That is something that for them to work through, and this approval process provide an avenue for residents to bring up our concern. So we all listened, but at this point, I think as Saxena said, we don't have a jurisdiction to get involved in matters pertaining to HOA. We should be objectively looking at these tree removals based on expert advice, and so I feel comfortable with the staff recommendation and voting on it. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Moripala. Vice Chair Scharf.
Thank you. Right. Thank you, Mooney. We are not here to mediate disputes among owners of the complex that are part of the HOA. But I will say that I've heard a few too many conflicting stories here tonight. I'm a little concerned. The HOA arborist first identified more trees for removal than the city ended up saying was necessary. And then the HOA removed those trees that the city said weren't necessary. So I'm concerned, why would the HOA arborist want those trees removed when the city said they were not necessary to remove? I'm concerned that 220 is being removed even though there's no professional assessment that it's diseased. And I'm concerned that the HOA is unwilling to determine the state of that tree. Now, I know, we take trees very seriously in Cupertino, and you can't just remove a tree even on your own property without getting the permit. I've been through this myself, and I'm also very concerned that we did not even have accurate maps to look at for this agenda item. I'm not sure, who's responsible for that, but this kind of thing is really not acceptable. So that's my position on that. So I will probably be the only person voting the other way on this. Thank you.
Thank you, Vice Chair Scharf. I wanted to make a couple points, and I do agree with a number of commissioners here. The first step is, having been a president of an HOA, I know these are internal affairs, and there's an internal process that's apparently something at the HOA that needs to be addressed. That's not for us to judge. But I like the fact that we do have an arborist that is serving as a forcing function against the HOA's arborist, because the economic incentive for the HOA's arborist is different than the city's arborist. And that helps me feel more confident about the two professional decisions, because if both professionals are in agreement as to which trees need to be removed based on their assessments, I highly doubt they're in cahoots to remove the trees, because one of them's getting the economic incentive, the other one is not. So that to me is an interesting dynamic from a game theory perspective. But I do have a larger concern, and it's not going to affect the way I vote, but this forced mandates of planting trees on every resident, and the forced mandates of the way we actually look at trees means if the kind of trees we put into place, we have to be a lot more thoughtful about, because they do consume a lot of water, they require a lot of maintenance, and they could create a lot of issues in the long run. And I know we love our trees in our city. I'm just saying that if we are planting trees, then let's not create our own root. This is truly a root problem. The first principle is the trees you plant better be darn good. Otherwise, we end up with these situations all the time. And I think we see a lot of this, like within the city. And as the city ages, we're going to continue to see a lot of these scenarios. I do agree with Vice Chair Scharf that we probably should have better information and better maps in there. And I had read all of the appellant's information, and there does seem something is going on there that doesn't make sense. So I'm not sure how I'm going to vote yet, but I probably will side with how our professionals have actually agreed, only because they're the forcing function to make sure that unnecessary trees aren't being removed. And not saying that the other arborist has an economic incentive to cut down trees, but for the reason of just cutting trees. But we do have a check and balance in place, and that would lead me to more side with the decision by staff. So, but I do think we do need better maps, and it would help to make sure that we have the right stuff in place. Actually, go ahead,
yeah.
Commissioner Saxena. Or Commissioner Mooney, go ahead.
Yeah. So on 220, the rationale given is, not the roots. If you look at the attached documents, it's too close to a building and, and the stairs and the structure. So that's the reason for, 220 removal, not, the roots. And that's why I went back and looked at, what's the bone of contention with respect to that tree. If it's, establishing, it's a root problem, and then I would suggest go ahead and spend the money and to establish that fact. But the package suggests it's too close to the structure.
It's I'm sure if they were to dig, and if you look closely, I was out there, you can see that there's going to be structural damage in the future. I mean, you can see that. So.
But doesn't the final conclusion on that report was it is diseased? They particularly mentioned the word diseased. So I noted that word, and that means that the whomsoever has done the assessment has concluded that the tree is diseased. So if it is diseased, that means either it is going to cause a damage around it, or you need to spend money in order to take it out of that situation or that condition. So I'm not sure that is there any other alternative we can arrive at in such case when it is so close to the house or close to the living area.
Right. They didn't say that one was diseased, though. That's it's too close, I guess you're saying.
Yeah, too close. Yeah. 284 is the one that's diseased, marked as diseased.
Proximity was the issue, not the health state of the tree. So just to be clear, from what I remember as I'm looking at this.
Okay. I had a question for the staff regarding the map, which is not correct. Do you think that that's a material enough issue for you to reconsider the proposal or the recommended proposal?
I think, as recommended, the trees definitely need to be removed. That fact does not change. As far as the replacement plan goes, that's something that we can certainly, be behind support if the commission wishes to modify that condition to say, an updated replacement plan will be provided prior to planting of the trees. We're certainly okay with that.
Okay. Thank you, Peter. So I don't know what the exact process is, but I'd like to propose the amendment to the motion that the approval be amended to acknowledge the fact that a new map will be provided.
Okay. Is there a second to that?
Yeah, I second it.
Okay. So we have amended reading. Okay. All right. Should we call for a vote? Have we done everything correctly? Just checking with our deputy city attorney.
Well, let's, Ms. Ghosh, are we going to have to modify the
resolution,
the draft resolution in some way?
Yes, I believe we can amend condition number 2. And that's what I was looking at right now. And I would suggest that in the, I'm going to share my screen if that's okay, Chair Wong.
Yeah, please do that. That the protected trees are a detriment to the subject property from there.
And then I think once we see this language, we should just, for the record, get the motion restated.
Correct.
So after this second paragraph right here at the top of page 4, middle of page 4, we can add language to say that the applicant shall provide, and maybe right there, at the end of that first sentence in that paragraph, say the applicant shall provide an updated replacement plan to be reviewed and approved by the city prior to planting the replacements.
Okay, is that So how do we restate that? I believe we're going to restate that we agree with.
Okay. So let me make an attempt. I have 2 years of practice, but I'm not that great. So I make a motion to approve the staff recommendation to deny the appeal with the appropriate amendments, including the 2 which are there already and the one proposed by planning manager Piyush Ghosh about the HOA submitting and getting approval for the replacement tree plan.
Does that cover it, Seth? I believe so.
As long as that also covers the grid that was submitted, that was recommended by staff initially as an amended condition of approval.
So the
Correct. This is not.
the tree replacement, right? So.
Yes, this is just language added to that second paragraph in condition number 2, and the grid would still be kept.
The grid will be kept. The proposed replacements of total 17 replacement trees to be planted on the subject property within 30 days of removal. The applicant shall provide an updated replacement plan for review and approval by the city prior to tree planting. That's the added item in red. So
correct.
Okay. All right. We still have a second for that?
I'll second third time.
Okay. All right. Good. Okay. Let's call for a vote.
Okay. Commissioner Capil?
Yeah. Yes.
Commissioner Modipatla?
Yes.
Commissioner Saxena?
Yes.
Vice Chair Sharp?
No.
And Chair Wong?
Aye.
Thank you. The motion carries 4-1-0 with Commissioner Sharp voting no.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Thank you, staff, for being here, and appreciate that. Let's move on to the next item on the agenda. I don't think we have any old business. I don't think we have any new business, but let's look at staff and commission reports. We'll go down the line, and then, of course, we'll go to any future agenda items, which will be the next item. So staff and commission reports. So we'll go to Commissioner Capil.
I didn't attend any additional meetings between now and 18th.
No problem. Okay. Commissioner Modipatla.
Nothing to report.
Quite okay. Commissioner Saxena.
Well, I did attend the mayor's meeting, but I was not there for the emergency meeting last week, so I couldn't present my views on that. So one topic which had come up was about the reopening of CSD schools and the large concern in the parents community about the delays and the process which is being followed. Mayor Paul had mentioned that the city was thinking of considering a pod-based approach for people, especially who need to have the children supervised while they work, and with some other need-based criteria to be able to go in some city-provided pod for that time period. I think the idea was interesting, and it is something which our city should step up to help the people in the most need. But that whole question of when should the schools reopen and whether CUSD is falling far behind our neighboring districts was brought up and discussed in the meeting.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. Commissioner Scharf, Vice Chair Scharf.
Nothing related to the city. I did attend the California Association, California Alliance of Local Electeds meeting, where we had a state senator as our guest, as we often do, to discuss housing and the future of housing and several bills that are coming up for a vote by the legislature. And that was a very interesting meeting. There were also 2 city council members, I believe, that attended. Thank you.
Great. I also attended the meeting, but not the meeting you attended, but the meeting before that week for California Alliance of Locally Elected, and also discussions about housing bills that are coming down the pike in terms of what's going on and the war against single-family housing zoning. So that's in play. So I have nothing else to add. Are there any future agenda items that commissioners would like to propose? Now's the time to put that into the queue. So
it's not necessarily a agenda item, but I would like to understand, the sound/noise ordinance and details in the city. The reason I'm asking is, I've heard from some residents that some of the churches, are like they're loud and too late in the night and stuff like that. So I'm just trying to gather some information to see if we have a problem there.
Yeah, I also have something that I saw a lot of boards putting up on the houses, and some schools are closing, like Lincoln, and so I would like to understand the rationale basically more clearly, rather than through a second-hand information which is saying that student population is less and doesn't justify the budgetary requirements or things like that. I mean,
These are not agenda items.
Okay.
So I think we're in the future agenda setting.
You're correct. We're in the future agenda setting area of the item. So if that's an item that you guys want to add, then that's something to think about or consider. So we're taking those items here. So is there anyone else that has a second that wants to support that? Then that would be on the agenda. I believe that's how that works. Is that correct, Deputy City Attorney?
Can you state that again? What?
So we propose an idea for a potential agenda item. A second from another commissioner will allow that item to be considered, and then that will be agendized and then placed onto the calendar at a time that makes sense between the chair and the staff liaison.
Okay, can you repeat what that agenda item is?
And please repeat the agenda item that you were saying, Mr. Commissioner Capil.
The rationale for closing schools in Cupertino.
The what of schools in Cupertino? The
Rationale.
Rationale.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll second
for
that.
Closures of schools.
So,
but is that's not within our purview, though?
Right.
Right. It is not.
So,
well, I think there is.
I just want to make sure it's not within our purview as a planning commission. So,
okay, there is an element of planning involved there, in the sense that while researching the finances of CUST, we realized that owner-occupied versus rental housing have different characteristics when it comes to Prop 13 and the impact on the tax revenue base. And there is also like a hypothesis that rental housing has a higher student generation ratio than owner-occupied housing, which also contributes to the situation we are in, where our tax base is just not large enough to support the student population. So there are planning-related issues there, and I think it's something we should definitely study. To me, it's more like a request for information to CUST, so they can tell us what the past data has been, or what it has suggested, and how that should influence the city's planning process going forward. Because clearly there was a planning failure in the past 2-3 decades, because of which we are in a situation where we are in, where almost 30% of classes are held in portables, and we're still running out of money.
Yeah, so that part, I agree, right? So there is a planning type to this aspect of, but not necessarily whether schools should close or not. It's, how do we plan or how do we decide on future projects?
How do we create effective zoning policies that would encourage the right mix of housing that would impact the funding of CUSD schools, I think is what you're asking.
Yes.
Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
or even the mix of owner-occupied versus rental and all those things which contribute, because of the complex tax laws we have, including Prop 13, it's a pretty complex thing, and understanding that and communicating that to the community, I think, will be a worthwhile exercise.
Correct. Some is by per pupil and some it is by per tax base. And I think we're requesting that information to help us with planning. Okay, so that's an item that you want put as an agenda item as a request to CUSD in something that we would draft from the Planning Commission to say, we would like to have this following information for input in terms of our general plan, planning process, I think is what you're saying. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Okay, is there a second?
If I may ask a clarifying question, with regard to what you're suggesting, you know, we are going to embark on our housing element process, and there's going to be a lot of discussions around planning to accommodate all the housing that we're looking at. I'm just trying to understand how, you know, I just feel like this might fit into that process. And so are you suggesting having a separate item related to this? I mean, there's certainly a lot of work that can go into this, and I'm just trying to get more information about what would be helpful.
It sounds like you have an existing process where we can put this in, and it sounds like the commissioners are trying to get information in advance to fit within the timeline to be able to add to that into the decision. So if there's an existing process that you have with the housing element that allows us to ask and request information from the school district, then let's fit within that process. If we don't have that in place, then let's do something so we can be more proactive and truly understand how any kind of zoning impacts and planning commission impacts may have to funding of the schools.
Yeah, because we're in a really awkward situation in CUSD where we are in real terms probably among the lowest per pupil funded district in whole of California and the country. So it's like a totally bizarre situation right now, especially if you account for the cost of living in this area.
Yeah, I personally want to approve our net positive to the community, right? And I don't know if we have done that in the past, right?
Yeah, I would favor putting it on the agenda as well and not discussing it right now.
There's 5 of us that actually that would like to put that on the agenda. I'll work with Pew and our city attorney, make sure we're doing it in the proper way. So 1, it's within our jurisdiction. 2, it makes sense within the timeline. And if it's something that helps us in the process, we'll find time to put that on the agenda. So, okay. So there's 5 commissioners agree that this is something that's important, and we will figure out a way to work within what our process is. If it's outside our process, we'll try to make sure that we have the ability to actually get that information incorporated into the new process. Okay.
We'll put it on the future agenda items list.
Future agenda items, yeah. Okay, great. Well, that agenda item now works. The future agenda. So thank you, everybody, for being patient. Okay, with that, I don't think we have any. Are there any other topics before we close? I know we all like to hang out together this late, so it's okay. Just kidding. It was more fun when we were in person. So I can't wait till we actually get to do that again. So, okay, well, with that, I'm going to adjourn. And thank you, residents of Cupertino, for following along with our conversations around planning. We're going to adjourn the March 23rd City of Cupertino Planning Commission meeting. Thank you, everybody, for attending. So,
thank you.
Thank you.
See you in 2 weeks.